It was a mistake. CEO dumps. Pregnant wife, then crumbles. Years later, seeing the proof of love, the cold truth, subscribe now and hit that like button if you believe that true love always finds its way back, no matter how many years pass. In the comments, tell us, what would you have done immediately after Alexander's cruel words? Alexander Sterling stood by the window of his penthouse. The city sprawled beneath him, an organism of light and movement, all manageable, all under control, just the way he liked it. He built empires of steel and glass, believing emotions were liabilities for the unambitious. Behind him, Clara, her arms crossed, hoped for understanding. But deep down, she knew the end. When Alexander finally turned to her, his voice was measured, the same tone he used to close multi-million-dollar deals. "It wasn't love, Clara. You were a mistake," he said, each word a deliberate cruelty. He expected tears, pleading. Instead, she simply nodded. "Then I hope you never make the same mistake twice," she said quietly, her voice trembling but firm enough to make him momentarily flinch. She walked past him, the faint scent of jasmine lingering long after the door closed. Alexander poured a drink, telling himself it was the right decision. Love, whatever it was, only distracted people. Meanwhile, across the city, Clara sat alone, the truth settling in. She had loved him completely, believing a heart existed beneath his walls. She was wrong. Days later, she packed silently. She left her job, sold what she could, and moved to a small coastal town hours away. The air was cleaner. The sea sounded like forgiveness. She found work in a small florist shop owned by an old widow who asked no questions. A month later, when she saw the 2 lines appear on the pregnancy test, the world tilted. "You are not a mistake," she whispered to her still flat belly, a fierce, trembling resolve blooming inside her. She would never let Alexander's words define her child. Chapter 1. The Quiet Void. Back in the city, Alexander barely noticed her absence. He immersed himself in work, but sometimes, late at night, a thought crossed his mind. How silent she had been when she left. No tears, no anger, just silence. It unsettled him, but he always pushed it away, reminding himself that emotions were irrelevant. His empire grew, but his heart felt heavier. The void he had cultivated was closing in. He found no satisfaction in his victories. Sometimes, seeing a parent with a child on the street, an unknown pang twisted in his chest. One afternoon, he returned home and found the scent of jasmine in the elevator, a perfume some stranger must have worn. It left him immobile. His throat tightened as he entered his sterile penthouse, the silence now unbearable. He began to wonder if he had made a mistake. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Clara was building a new rhythm. Her life revolved around the scents of roses and lavender. Her pregnancy was beginning to show. Nobody judged her. The townspeople simply accepted her. She would sit by the shore, whispering to the baby, "You'll have his eyes, perhaps, but not his heart. Yours will be better." As the months passed, the baby became her world. In the city, Alexander found himself plagued by unresolved dreams. Sometimes of Clara, sometimes of a child he didn't recognize, a small voice calling his name. He woke up with his heart pounding, finally feeling fear. Fear of what he had done. Fear of what he might have lost without even knowing it. Chapter 2. The Ethereal Blue Eyes. The baby arrived, a girl she named Lily. The first time Clara held her, fear and anger dissolved into pure love. Lily had Alexander's eyes, incredibly blue and bright. Every time Clara looked into them, her heart ached with a confused mix of love and loss. Those eyes were innocent, untainted by his cruelty. The first months were hard. Money was tight. Sleep was rare. but Lily's smile made everything bearable. The kind old florist, Mrs. Whitaker, helped out, rocking the baby while Clara arranged bouquets. Clara started drawing again, filling her sketchbook with the sea, the town, and sketches of her daughter. In the city, Alexander's life became heavier. He dated women who understood success, but no one stayed long. Something inside him was numb. He began waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing, tormented by dreams. He started playing the piano again, and as the soft notes filled the empty space, he closed his eyes and saw Clara's face. The calm disappointment in her eyes that last night. It broke through the wall he had built around himself, leaving him breathless. He realized that everything he touched turned cold. 2 years later, Lily was curious and bright. Her laughter filled their small home. Clara often thought that her daughter carried a purity that neither pain nor time could touch. But Alexander was also beginning to crack. He was seeing the image of a child on the street, an unknown desire twisting in his chest. He stood on his balcony, looking at the endless horizon, and for the first time in years, he whispered her name. He didn't know why, but a quiet voice told him that the life he had built was not a victory, but a punishment. Chapter 3. The Convergence. Lily turned 3. One evening, after her small birthday party, she leaned against Clara and whispered, "Mommy, do I have a daddy?" The question cut through Clara like a knife. She told Lily she had her, and that was enough. But later, she sat in the dark, tears streaming down her face. She had done everything to bury the past, yet it had found a way back through the mouth of an innocent child. She didn't know that that very night, hundreds of miles away, Alexander stood on his balcony, whispering her name, realizing the life he had built was hollow. Then, fate intervened. A group of developers arrived in the coastal town, planning a new resort. Clara overheard the name of their leader, Pierce Holdings. She immediately searched online. The first thing she saw was his face. Alexander Pierce. The possibility terrified her. The following Monday, Alexander arrived with a small team. As he drove through the narrow streets, he felt an uncanny familiarity. Walking near the bluffs, he glanced down and saw a woman pushing a stroller. Something about the curve of her shoulders made his heart race. Later, something drew him to a small florist shop. He walked in. The bell above the door chimed softly. She turned. Time stopped. "Clara," he managed to whisper. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice firm. "You live here." Before he could answer, a small voice called from the back room. "Mommy!" Lily appeared, her blue eyes bright, her smile wide. She ran and hugged Clara's leg. Alexander froze. His world narrowed to the child before him. The resemblance was undeniable. The same eyes, the same hair. His breath hitched as the realization washed over him. "She is Lily," Clara said quietly. "My daughter." He couldn't speak. Every wall he had built crumbled in an instant. For the first time in his life, Alexander Pierce understood what it meant to lose everything without even now knowing it was his. Chapter 4. The Redemption begins. "You should leave," Clara said, her voice strained. "It's too late." "I didn't know about her," he pleaded, his voice rough. "You chose not to know. There is a difference." Her words hit him harder than any accusation. Later, Alexander returned, desperate. "Please, let me be part of her life." "No." Clara's face hardened. "You don't get to decide that now. You had your chance." "She is my daughter," he cried, his voice breaking. "She is my whole world, Alexander. You can't just walk in and claim her because you suddenly remembered how to feel." He finally capitulated. "Let me earn it then. I won't leave. I promise. This time, I won't." In the days that followed, Alexander kept his distance. He bought flowers, sometimes standing silently in the shop while Clara worked, his presence cautious, humble. He had spent years controlling the world with words, but now silence was his only weapon. One afternoon, when the shop was busy, Lily struggled to reach a vase. Alexander instinctively helped her. "Thank you, mister," she started. "Alex," he corrected gently, smiling despite the pain in his chest. Clara watched, her heart conflicted. She couldn't deny that Alexander was trying. The arrogance was gone. All that remained was the quiet, patient pain of a man who had learned humility the hardest way possible. Do you think Clara should have forgiven Alexander immediately, or is earning trust the only way forward? Share your perspective. This is the moment of truth. Like and subscribe for the final beautiful chapter. Chapter 5, The Unbreakable Bond, final chapter. The following weeks melted into months. Alexander's presence became a reliable part of their days, constant like the tide. He never pushed, never assumed. He listened, even when her words contained anger. He helped out in the shop, his powerful hands clumsy with wrapping bouquets. Lily adored Mr. Alex, the kind man who bought her ice cream and told her stories about cities that touched the sky. One rainy afternoon, Clara found Alexander sitting outside the shop, soaked, holding a small, awkwardly wrapped bouquet. "You'll catch a cold," she said sharply, approaching with an umbrella. "I wanted to bring these," he said, handing her the flowers. "For Lily. I know I don't have to do this." He smiled weakly. "But I want to." Something shifted. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but the ice began to crack. She allowed him small moments, helping in the shop on weekends, short walks, sitting with Lily in the park while Clara watched. For the first time, she saw the man beneath the armor, the man who was lost and desperately trying to find his way back. When Lily turned 5, Alexander stopped them during a walk on the beach. He knelt in the sand, pulling a small box from his pocket. "This is not guilt," he said, his eyes fixed on hers. "This is the only thing in my life I am sure of. Love is the only thing that has made me want to be better. You and Lily are my home." Clara's eyes filled with tears. She had built walls to keep him out, but his patient tenderness had brought them down. "You broke me once," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "And I survived. But if I say yes now, it's because I want you in the life I built, not because I need you to save me." He nodded, accepting the terms of her strength. When she said yes, the sound of the sea swelled around them like applause. Lily clapped her small hands, feeling the pure joy of the moment. Months later, the florist shop was filled with laughter. Alexander had stepped away from the city empire, choosing a smaller, quieter office nearby. The town whispered less. Their story had transformed from gossip into a legend. A man who once thought he could buy the world, instead found everything he needed in a small coastal town. As the sun set, Alexander Pierce finally understood what it meant to have everything, and it had nothing to do with power. The man who once called love a weakness had learned that love was the only force that could save him. Chapter 6. The Unfinished Business. Subscribe now and hit that like button. If you think true love should always come before the boardroom, in the comments tell us, what kind of ethical business venture do you think Alexander should launch to redeem his past? 5 years of coastal peace. 5 years had passed since Alexander and Clara remarried. Their life in the small coastal town was idyllic. Lily, now 8, was thriving. A confident, curious girl whose laughter was the soundtrack to their home. Alexander had kept his promise, running a small, quiet consulting firm from a local office, choosing school plays over board meetings. Clara's florist shop, renamed the Seaside Bloom, was the heart of the community, and her drawings had earned her local recognition as an artist. They had found their peace, built on honesty, forgiveness, and the rhythm of the ocean. However, the old Leo, the sharp, ambitious mind, was restless, not for power, but for purpose. The call from the city. The catalyst arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. Alexander received a call from Daniel, his former business partner in the city. "Alex, it's about Pierce Holdings." Daniel's voice was strained. "Since you left, the new management has gone completely rogue. They're making aggressive, unethical acquisitions, using the company's influence to exploit vulnerable coastal communities, specifically targeting the very land around your town." Alexander felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. The company he built on cold logic was now threatening the life he had built on love. "They're using old loopholes you created, Alex," Daniel continued. "They're moving fast. Unless someone with deep institutional knowledge, someone like you, intervenes, they'll destroy that beautiful town and displace hundreds of families." Alexander hung up, his hands shaking slightly. He looked at the gentle rain falling on the hydrangea bushes outside. He had found peace by running away from the Empire, but now the Empire was coming for his peace. The new mission. That evening, Alexander sat Clara down after Lily was asleep. "I have to go back," he stated simply, knowing the words would cut her deeply. Clara's face went pale. "Go back? To the city? To that life? Alexander, we built this life here. You promised." "I promised I wouldn't leave you, and I won't," he insisted, taking her hands. "But the company I built is attacking this community. They're using my own playbook to destroy what we love. I can't ask the community to trust me if I don't fight to protect them with every resource I have." He explained the situation, the unethical acquisitions, the legal loopholes, the threat to their home. "This isn't the old ambition, Clara," Alexander pleaded. "This is redemption. I have to go back and dismantle the monster I created, using my power to protect, not to profit." Clara looked at him, seeing the fierce resolve in his blue eyes, the same eyes that once proclaimed her a mistake, but now held a commitment she couldn't deny. She saw a man fighting, not for a larger bank account, but for a smaller, more meaningful life. "If you go back," Clara warned, her voice firm, "you go back on our terms. You stay honest. You call us every night. And you never ever forget why you are fighting this battle." Do you think Alexander is risking too much by returning to the high-stakes world of the city? Or is this the final, necessary test of his redemption? The return of Alexander Pierce, the next morning, Alexander Pierce left the peaceful coast and returned to the glass and steel jungle. But this Alexander was different. His suit still impeccable, but his heart was anchored hundreds of miles away. He didn't return to his old penthouse. He rented a small, functional apartment. He didn't seek out old friends. He only sought out lawyers specializing in ethical corporate warfare. His mission was clear: acquire and dismantle the rogue management of Pierce Holdings. The boardroom was shocked when he walked in. The new CEO, a ruthless operator named Victor, laughed. "Alex, look at you. The humble florist. You can't fight us. We have the resources, the contracts, and the majority vote." "You have a company built on my legacy," Alexander countered, his voice steady. "And I'm here to reclaim its soul." The battle was fierce. Victor's team used every dirty trick, including leaking rumors to the press about Alexander's mental instability after his sudden departure years ago. Alexander, remembering Clara's humiliation, simply absorbed the blows. He fought back with meticulous data, exposing the illegalities of the new management and leveraging his deep, old connections. The turning point came when Alexander used his last remaining personal capital to buy back a small, decisive block of shares, giving him just enough power to call an emergency board vote. In the final tense boardroom showdown, Alexander didn't argue money. He presented a damning report detailing how Victor's greed was not only unethical, but was now becoming a massive legal liability, threatening the entire firm's future. The board, faced with losing billions, sided with Alexander. Victor was ousted. Meaningful conclusion. The true victory. 2 weeks later, Alexander returned to the coast, defeated in the boardroom sense. He hadn't made a penny and was actually poorer, but victorious in soul. He immediately resigned as CEO of Pierce Holdings, installing Daniel with strict ethical oversight. He had done what he set out to do. He found Clara in the garden, arranging hydrangeas. "It's done," he said quietly. "The town is safe. I'm home." Clara looked up, her green eyes shining. She didn't ask about the stock or the vote. She saw the peace in his eyes, the clarity that had been missing even during their quiet years. "Welcome home, my husband," she said, rising and embracing him. Their true victory wasn't over a contract or a title. It was over the toxic desire for power. Alexander had finally chosen the simplicity of love over the complexity of an empire, proving his redemption was absolute. What special moment do you think Alexander should create next for Lily to celebrate his final victory and homecoming? Don't forget to like and subscribe to Let's Know the journey of Alexander and Clara's enduring love. Chapter 7, The Dual Legacy. The architect and the artist. Subscribe now and hit that like button if you believe that children always inherit the best parts of their parents. In the comments, tell us, will Lily choose the path of the architect or the florist when she grows up? The resettling. A life rebuilt. 2 years had passed since Alexander's final return from his corporate battle. Their life had settled into a quiet rhythm, but this time it was reinforced by a deeper conviction. Alexander had completely detached from the world of billion-dollar deals. He dedicated his time to consulting local small businesses and pouring his passion into restoring an old maritime museum in the town, a non-profit project that filled the void of strategy and creativity he once found in empire building. Clara, now an established artist and florist, felt genuine peace. She knew Alexander was hers, not because of a promise, but because of his daily choice. Lily, now 10, was the perfect synthesis of both parents. She had the sharp, analytical blue eyes that loved dissecting the structure of everything, like Alexander, but a soul that was intensely sensitive and loved nature, like Clara. The architect's daughter, one evening, as Lily was doing her homework, she brought a model made of wooden blocks over to Alexander. "Daddy," she said, pointing to the complex structure, "I built a new pier. It has to be strong enough to withstand big waves, but it also has to be beautiful. Did I miscalculate the stability here?" Alexander looked at the model. It was an intelligent design, blending the rigidity of engineering with the aesthetics he had taught her. He looked at his daughter, his heart swelling with pride. "This design is very stable, Princess," Alexander smiled. "You've balanced the logic and the art." The moment made him realize that even though he had left the business, his legacy lived on in his daughter. A person who would build, but with a kinder soul than he ever had. The artist's legacy. The next day, Lily followed Clara to the flower shop. A special client had ordered a complex bouquet for a proposal, a true challenge of emotional storytelling and color balance. Lily watched her mother arrange the flowers, her blue eyes gleaming with focus. "Mommy, why are you putting that yellow rose next to the purple lavender?" Lily asked. "It seems wrong with all these whites and pinks." Clara smiled, explaining color theory and emotion carefully. "The yellow rose stands for betrayal and new beginnings after the storm. The purple stands for reconciliation and trust. I place them at the center. This bouquet isn't just about new love. It's about overcoming pain to find love." Lily was silent, and then her eyes lit up. "I get it. It's like how you and Daddy broke all the blocks. Mistake. And then built the beautiful, strong house forgiveness again." Clara felt a lump in her throat. Lily didn't just inherit Alexander's eyes. She inherited her parents' ability to see the complexity, the pain, and ultimately, the redemption of their history. What do you think Alexander would say to Lily when she asks why he once called her mother a mistake? The unexpected reunion. The family was enjoying a weekend picnic on the beach when a sleek, black corporate car pulled up and parked. A man stepped out. It was Daniel, Alexander's former partner, the one he had entrusted with running Pierce Holdings. Daniel approached with a personal mission. "Alex," Daniel said, his eyes filled with respect. "I know you don't want to come back, but I came here to tell you that I can't do this alone." He wasn't talking about business. He looked at Clara and Lily. "The company is completely clean now, but it lacks an ethical vision. Alex, you taught me how to build a strong company, but Clara taught me that empathy is a better metric than profit. I'm here to ask Clara to serve as an ethical consultant for Pierce Holdings community projects. She is the only person who can ensure we never forget the vulnerable people we are supposed to serve." Clara and Alexander looked at each other. This was the final, total act of redemption. Alexander's old empire was officially inviting Clara's moral vision to guide its path. Clara smiled. "I have one condition, Daniel. I will work remotely, and every meeting must start after I drop Lily off at school." Alexander wrapped his arms around his wife and daughter, feeling an absolute peace. He had once thought he had to build skyscrapers to make history, but in fact, he only needed to build a home with love, patience, and honesty. It was the beginning of a new chapter, where both of them were the builders. Alexander building the legacy, and Clara building its heart. Would you like me to continue expanding the story with Clara's new journey in the corporate world, or move on to a new dramatic story? Chapter 8. The Ethical Architect. Subscribe now and hit that like button if you believe that empathy is the most powerful tool in the boardroom. In the comments, tell us, what kind of major project do you think Clara's first ethical review should focus on at Pierce Holdings? The new office. Jasmine in the machine. Clara's first month as the ethical consultant for Pierce Holdings was a study in contrasts. She worked remotely from a quiet, seaside office Alexander had set up for her, but her influence quickly permeated the glass towers of the city. The executives, initially skeptical of the florist consultant, quickly realized she wasn't there to soften the edges. She was there to rebuild the foundation. Her reports were meticulous, not just detailing financial risks, but human risks. Her first major challenge focused on an inherited project, a large-scale housing development intended for a vulnerable community near a newly acquired industrial zone. The project was technically profitable, but Clara saw the ethical flaw immediately. "The housing is too close to the industrial noise and pollution," Clara stated in a video conference with Daniel and the project manager. "The rent is affordable now, but the health risks will increase the long-term cost for the families and the municipality. It's short-term gain for long-term human detriment." The project manager, a young, ambitious man named Mark, resisted fiercely. "Mrs. Sterling, with all due respect, we've secured the permits. The profit margin is 22%. Your role is advisory, not to veto a fully legal, massive revenue stream." Clara looked at the cold logic, recognizing the ghost of the old Alexander. The strategy of empathy. Clara didn't fight with legal jargon. She fought with empathy and data. "Mark," Clara said calmly, "I understand the profit. But let me ask you, does Pierce Holdings want to be known for building beautiful buildings or for building stable lives? Right now, this project builds resentment and sickness." She then presented a simple but devastatingly effective counterproposal: the human cost. She showed projected long-term medical costs for the children living in the polluted zone, framing the lack of ethical consideration as a future public relations and legal liability, appealing to Daniel's caution. The better build. She used her architectural eye, honed by watching Lily and Alexander, to propose a slight redesign. Shift the housing development a mere half-mile away, using a former green zone that the town had already offered for community use. and integrate sound barriers into the design. The new profit. She demonstrated that by prioritizing community health and sustainability, they could secure government incentives and ethical investment bonds that would increase the long-term, stable profit margin to 22, while drastically improving the company's ESG, environmental, social, and governance score. Clara's analysis was flawless. She had leveraged her humanitarian perspective to expose a cold, financial blind spot. She had used empathy as the most powerful strategic tool. Daniel, watching the exchange, was stunned by the clarity. "Mark," he interrupted, "Mrs. Sterling has demonstrated that the current plan is fiscally irresponsible and ethically bankrupt. We follow Mrs. Sterling's recommendation. We are not interested in short-term profits built on human cost anymore." The Sterling-Pierce Standard. Clara had not just won a debate. She had officially instituted a new standard at Pierce Holdings, the Sterling-Pierce Ethical Standard. The old ways of prioritizing profit over people were over. Alexander, who had remained silent during the entire deliberation, called her immediately after the meeting. "You are incredible," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You walked into that boardroom and changed the entire culture of the company with a single memo. You are the architect of its soul, Clara." "I learned from the best architect," she replied softly. "You taught me how to see the structures, Leo. I just added the flowers." The true victory was subtle. Mark, the ambitious young project manager, called Clara the next day. Not to complain, but to ask for her advice on how to integrate community feedback into the next project. The culture was changing. What advice do you think Clara gave Mark to help him transition from old-school ambition to the new ethical standard? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow Clara as she continues to build an empire of empathy. Chapter 9. The House of Second Chances. Subscribe now and hit that like button if you believe that sometimes healing the past means building a better future. In the comments, tell us, what kind of unique architectural detail do you think Lily will insist on adding to the new project? Clara's signature project. After successfully navigating the challenge of the industrial housing project, Clara, the ethical consultant, was given full authority by Daniel to select Pierce Holdings' next major community development. Her choice was deeply personal, a transitional housing center for single parents, particularly mothers, facing homelessness or domestic upheaval. The location she chose was symbolic, a large, neglected plot of land in the very same capital city where she had fled years ago, struggling to raise Lily alone in a tiny apartment while working as a junior consultant. Clara's vision for the Seaside Bloom House, named after her florist shop, was radical. It wouldn't just be temporary shelter. It would be a holistic center offering childcare, job training, leveraging Pierce Holdings' vast network, and business mentorship, spearheaded by Clara herself. The emotional blueprint. Clara designed the center's philosophy based entirely on her own painful experience. Safety and dignity. Each unit would have a private entrance and a small garden plot, ensuring the privacy and dignity she desperately lacked in her first shared apartment complex. Community and support. A communal kitchen and co-working space would be built, mirroring the life-saving support she received from Adelaide and her neighbor, Conceição. Healing spaces. The common areas would be filled with natural light, soft colors, and fresh flowers, a non-negotiable from Clara, acknowledging the emotional healing power of beauty and nature. Alexander, now a consultant on the project, saw the pain and love poured into the blueprint. "It's beautiful, Clara," he said, reviewing the plans. "But it's more than architecture. It's your memoir. It's the shelter I wished I had when I was vomiting on the side of the road that night," Clara responded, her voice tight. "It's built on every fear I had and every lesson I learned. I have to build a place that tells those women, you are not a mistake. The Lily factor. Lily, now 10, became the project's official junior design consultant. She had inherited her father's eye for structure and her mother's empathy, and she used both. Lily's key demand was non-negotiable. The children need a secret garden just for them, with no signs, where they can plant anything they want, and a small, quiet space that looks like a lighthouse, where they can go when they are scared. Lily's insight that the children needed a place to process their fear and claim their own space was immediately integrated into the final design, adding an invaluable layer of emotional intelligence. The unexpected donor. As the project neared its groundbreaking, a major ethical investment consortium, the Thorn Foundation, agreed to provide the final, substantial funding needed. The name sent a jolt through Clara and Alexander. The Thorn Foundation was run by Daniel Thorn, Alexander's former partner, the man who ultimately helped facilitate the downfall of the old Pierce Holdings management. Daniel arrived at the coast to finalize the donation, bringing with him his elderly, sharp-witted aunt, Adelaide Thorn, the same Adelaide who mentored Clara. The reunion was emotional and profound. Clara, Adelaide said, embracing her warmly, I knew the moment I saw you in that small apartment that you were destined for something greater than consulting. I am so proud that the woman who healed herself is now building the foundation for others. Daniel revealed the reason for their investment. When my team reviewed the project, it wasn't the numbers that convinced us. It was the soul in the architecture. It was the fact that you built a home, not just a shelter. My aunt insisted this project carry our name because it represents the highest standard of ethical redemption in business. The circle was complete. The support network that once quietly saved Clara's life now publicly validated her vision, ensuring that the seaside Bloomhouse would be fully funded and secured for decades to come. Meaningful conclusion. The bloom of resilience. The groundbreaking ceremony was held under a clear, bright sky. Alexander stood next to Clara, Lily between them, holding a small shovel. Clara realized that her most profound achievement wasn't the successful business, the forgiveness, or the second chance at marriage. It was the fact that she had transformed her deepest wound, the pain of public humiliation and isolation, into a shelter of hope for other women. Alexander had redeemed his legacy. Not by building tall towers in the city, but by funding and protecting the House of Second Chances, built by the woman he had once wrongly called a mistake. What special detail do you think Clara will add to the design to honor her mentor, Adelaide? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow Clara as she continues to build an empire of empathy and resilience. Tuyệt vời. Tôi rất vui vì bạn thích cái kết đầy ý nghĩa này, nơi Clara biến nỗi đau của mình thành hy vọng cho người khác. Chúng ta hãy tiếp tục câu chuyện bằng một phan ngoại truyện cuối cùng, Final Epilogue, tập trung vào mối quan hệ giữa Clara và Lily, khi Lily bắt đầu bước vào tuổi thiếu niên và cách cô bé nhìn nhận về toàn bộ di sản gia đình mình. Đồng thời, Alexander nhận được một lời nhắc nhở sâu sắc về quá khứ. Đây là Epilogue, The True Bloom. Được viết bằng tiếng Anh. Epilogue. The True Bloom, subscribe now and hit that like button. If you appreciate the profound impact a mother's courage has on her daughter's future. In the comments, tell us, what kind of career do you think Lily will ultimately choose? Architecture or philanthropy? 5 years later, the architect and the artist. 5 years after the groundbreaking of the seaside Bloomhouse, life had found its most enduring pattern of peace. The center was flourishing, a beacon of hope in the capital city. Clara remained the active, ethical consultant for Pierce Holdings, ensuring the company maintained the high moral standards she had instituted. Lily was 15, a thoughtful, brilliant teenager who excelled in both advanced math and art. She was now tall, with her father's striking features, but her deep green eyes held her mother's quiet intensity and empathy. One afternoon, Lily came home from a school field trip to the capital. She was quiet, troubled in a way she rarely was. "Mom," Lily finally asked, sitting down in Clara's small, sunny office at the seaside Bloom. "In the city today, a girl recognized Dad. She said her mom told her dad used to be a really big, cold CEO, and that you were the wrong wife he left." Clara's heart seized. She had hoped this direct confrontation with the old gossip would come later. Clara closed her laptop and turned fully towards her daughter. "That is part of our story, Lily, and that girl's mother is only partially correct." Clara then pulled out 2 items, a framed photograph of the seaside Bloom house upon completion, and the small, old, velvet-covered box that once held the simple engraved sterling silver pen Alexander used to propose. "Your father was once cold. He chose money and pride over love. Yes, he made a terrible mistake, and I left alone. That is the truth," Clara said, her voice steady. She pointed to the house photo. "But he returned not to reclaim a title, but to reclaim us. He came back to dismantle the monster he created, and he used all his power and money to build this, a place of safety built on my pain, for other mothers. He fought for his soul, Lily." She handed Lily the velvet box. "He gave me this pen, not a diamond. It represents the partnership of equals he promised. The story isn't about the mistake he made. It's about the house we rebuilt, with the tools of forgiveness and honesty. That is your real legacy, sweetie. Never let anyone define your family by its beginning, only by its enduring strength." Lily looked at the house, then at the pen, then back at her mother. She understood. Her eyes filled with tears, but not of sadness, of profound pride. Alexander's final reminder, meanwhile. Alexander was in his home office, reviewing documents for the Maritime Museum project. He received an unexpected final piece of mail, a plain, unmarked envelope containing an old, yellowed photo. It was the picture of him and Clara from years ago, the one Clara had left face down on the table the night she left, the one he had tried to ignore for months. Attached was a short note, unsigned. "I found this when closing out some old accounts. It seems someone thought this chapter needed to be truly archived." Alexander looked at the photo, seeing the confident, arrogant CEO and the young, vulnerable woman beside him. He remembered the coldness of his words. It was a mistake. He then looked at the date on the back of the photo. The date was just a few weeks before Lily was conceived. Alexander pressed the photo against his chest. He knew that unseen hand, perhaps Daniel, perhaps even the old driver, Anthony, was giving him one last profound reminder. He had been given a second chance, a life he did not deserve, but had finally earned. He didn't throw the photo away. He placed it next to the velvet box in his safe, a permanent, silent reminder that the true measure of a man is not the empire he builds, but the humility with which he rebuilds his heart. The true bloom of the Sterling family. The story of Alexander and Clara wasn't just a love story. It was a testament to the fact that redemption is not a single event, but a lifelong commitment to integrity. They had raised a daughter who understood that true strength lies in vulnerability and forgiveness. What beautiful project will Lily launch when she is 18, blending her father's structure and her mother's empathy? Don't forget to like and subscribe to celebrate the enduring power of the Seaside Bloom. The twin miracle. The price of cowardice. He left her because doctors told him she was infertile. 2 years later, he saw her with twins, and his world shattered. Do you believe in miracles born from pain? Smash the like button now. If you think life always finds a way, and comment what you would have done in Izzy's place. Chapter 1. The chill of a diagnosis, Isabel. Izzy Hayes sat silently in the cold London medical office, her hands tightly clenched in her lap. Her knuckles were white, and the fluorescent ceiling light hummed softly. The air smelled of antiseptic and paper, and time stretched endlessly between the moment the doctor walked in and the moment she finally spoke. Her voice was clinical, calm, using words like insufficient function, low probability, and then the word that hit Izzy like a punch to the chest, infertile. She didn't cry. Not immediately. She just sat there, mechanically, her face pale as her heartbeat echoed in her ears. When she walked out into the gray afternoon light, everything around her felt unreal. Cars passed, people talked on phones, children laughed in the distance. The world kept spinning while hers had just stopped. She had always dreamed of being a mother. That dream now felt like a cruel joke. Chapter 2. The cruelty of a goodbye. When she finally reached her flat in Notting Hill, Ethan Sterling, her boyfriend of 2 years, was home early. Dressed in an impeccable white shirt, he stood by the kitchen island with a glass of whiskey in one hand and his phone in the other. The golden evening light made his blue eyes look colder than usual. "You're home early," he said. Without much on. Izzy didn't answer right away. She slowly took off her coat, folded it with shaking hands, and placed it on the back of a chair. Then she spoke, her voice calm and firm, yet fragile. "I went to the doctor today." Ethan looked up. "How curious, man." She took a deep, steadying breath. "They told me I'm infertile. I can't have children." There was a long pause. Ethan stared at her, his face unreadable. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't move closer. He simply processed the words as if they were bad business news. Distant, unemotional, cold. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he put down his glass with a soft clink, picked up his jacket, and walked toward the door. "That changes things," he said bluntly. "I'm sorry." And with that, he left. The door closed behind him with a silent finality that resonated louder than any argument. Izzy remained frozen, staring at the closed door. When she finally collapsed to the floor, tears fell in heavy, uncontrollable waves. Not just for the man who walked out, but for the future she believed had just been stolen from her. Chapter 3. The canvas of pain. The following days faded into a silent, painful fog. Izzy stayed inside, barely speaking, barely moving, wrapped in a blanket that did nothing to warm her. Ethan never called, never texted. It was as if she had been erased from his life as easily as he had walked out the door. She returned to her sketchbook, not to work, but to survive. Slowly, her drawings changed. Abstract expressions of pain evolved into softer, more hopeful representations of motherhood and transformation. Her art became the only language she had the strength to speak aloud. Chapter 4. The unthinkable suspicion. A week later, she forced herself out. She sat in a corner cafe, watching the world continue without her. That realization hurt, but it also helped. Maybe the world wouldn't stop for her pain, but maybe, finally, she wouldn't stop for it either. That night, something strange happened. As she brushed her teeth, her stomach lurched, and a wave of nausea hit her hard. It must be stress. But a flicker of doubt crept in, uninvited. Over the next few days, the nausea didn't disappear. Her breasts were tender. She was exhausted, even after hours of sleep. She told herself it was depression. Finally, her best friend, Chloe, burst into the flat, armed with groceries and sheer determination. Izzy finally broke down in Chloe's arms. Chloe made soup, cleaned the kitchen, and anchored Izzy with her presence. That night, after yet another wave of nausea, Chloe leaned in and asked softly, "Izzy, is there any chance you could be pregnant?" Izzy laughed bitterly. "I'm infertile, remember?" But Chloe didn't laugh. "Are you sure?" It was the first time Izzy realized she wasn't. Not really. Just one diagnosis delivered in one sterile office by one doctor who barely looked at her. If you identify with the feeling of having to start over, comment rebirth, and don't forget to subscribe. Chapter 5. 2 lines, 1 destiny. The next morning, Izzy stood barefoot in her bathroom, staring at the pregnancy test monitor. Her fingers trembled. She told herself it was just to rule it out. She opened the box with rigid hands. Finally, holding her breath, she took the test. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, waiting for the longest minutes of her life. When the timer softly beeped, she didn't move. Then, she walked to the sink, her eyes fixed on the test. 2 lines. Her heart stopped. She blinked, thinking her eyes were playing tricks. But the lines remained clear, impossible to deny. She was pregnant. Tears streamed down her face. These were not the messy tears of grief, but something different. Soft, overwhelming, miraculous. She was stunned by the silent wonder that had taken root inside her. Chapter 6. The Double Miracle. That same day, she booked an appointment at a different clinic. She needed certainty. When the new doctor moved the wand over her abdomen, searching the screen for answers, seconds passed. Then, the faint, unmistakable sound of one heartbeat filled the room, and then another. Izzy's eyes flew open. "There are 2, the doctor said, smiling. "Were you expecting twins?" Izzy covered her mouth again. 2 heartbeats, 2 lives, inside her. It was more than a miracle. It was everything she thought she had lost forever. When she left the clinic, she clutched the ultrasound image like the most precious thing she had ever owned. She didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. Chapter 7. The Art of Motherhood. The following months were a quiet awakening. Izzy's art shifted from abstract expressions of pain to softer, more hopeful representations of motherhood and transformation. Her work matured, and she shared some of it online. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from women who felt understood. Chloe became her rock, helping her set up the nursery, soft sage green walls, and 2 side-by-side cribs. In her 7th month, Izzy received an unexpected email from a small gallery in central London. A curator had seen her work and wanted to include several pieces in a local exhibition focused on motherhood and identity. Izzy agreed. On the opening night, Izzy wore a flowing cream dress that gently embraced her rounded belly. She watched quietly as people stopped before her work. It wasn't fame or money she felt. It was something deeper. Connection. Chapter 8. The Return of the Shadow. Less than 2 weeks from her due date, Izzy walked slowly through Regent's Park. She sat on a bench near the fountain. It was then that her eyes landed on a tall figure across the path. Dressed in a tailored coat, Ethan Sterling was standing by the edge, talking on his phone. Her body froze. The world narrowed into a tunnel of sound and memory. He looked up. Their eyes met. He froze. The call ended. Ethan began walking toward her, slowly at first, then faster as he recognized her face. He stopped a few feet away, unsure how close he was allowed to get. "Izzy," he said, almost disbelieving. "You're pregnant!" She didn't respond. She looked at him with an expression that held no anger, but no welcome. "Is it mine?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly on the last word. "They are," she answered calmly, a hand resting protectively on her belly. "Twins. They'll be here soon." He sat beside her, staring blankly at the fountain. "I didn't know," he said. After a moment, "No one told me." "No, you didn't ask," she replied, not with bitterness, but with the simple truth. You left, and I didn't chase you. You thought I couldn't. I was scared. I handled it badly. Yes, you did, she said quietly. But I'm not here for apologies. I made peace with your absence. They are my daughters, Ethan. I carried them alone, and we will raise them if necessary. But now you have a choice. Not for me, for them. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something shatter behind his blue eyes. She carefully stood up. He instinctively reached to help her, and she allowed it, just for balance. I'm not asking for anything, she said. But if you truly want to be part of this, you must show up, not with words, but with presence. Then she walked away, leaving him standing beneath the amber light of the trees. With only the weight of the future, he still might have a chance to fight for. Have you ever wondered if people can truly change? Comment your opinion, and whether you think Ethan deserves a second chance, and don't forget to like. Chapter 9. The Rebirth in the Hospital. At dawn, the first contraction hit. Izzy called Chloe, then the hospital. The hours passed in a blur of pressure, effort, and sweat. When the first cry filled the room, followed by the second shortly after, Izzy felt her soul exhale for the first time in years. The nurses placed both babies on her chest, two perfect little girls, Olivia and Maya. Izzy sobbed, overwhelmed. She had done it, alone. She had grown two human beings from a place that once felt empty. A nurse knocked gently before entering. You have a visitor? She said softly. A man. He says his name is Ethan Sterling. Izzy froze. Finally, she said, let him in. Ethan entered the room. He was nothing like the man who had abandoned her in silence. He looked vulnerable. His eyes nervously searched until they landed on her. Then, slowly, they dropped to the two bassinets. He approached cautiously. They're beautiful, he said. His voice cracking. She watched him. He leaned closer to the bassinets, gently studying the girls as if they were rare, delicate artifacts. I don't know what to say, he admitted. I've been thinking about what I would say if this moment came, and now I'm here, and nothing feels sufficient. They don't need your words, she said softly. They need consistency, presence, patience. He sighed slowly. I know. I can't ask for anything. I just want to try. Even if you don't forgive me. I want to earn a place in their lives. She gestured toward a chair. Sit, but don't make promises you're not ready to keep. He sat in silence, and for a long time, they said nothing at all. Chapter 10. The Honest Commitment. The following months were a whirlwind of night feeds, diapers, and stolen naps. Izzy adapted to motherhood instinctively. Ethan kept coming, every day. He didn't bring flowers or grand gifts. Instead, he brought questions. He wanted to learn how to hold them, feed them, and recognize the different types of cries. He didn't try to impress or take control. He simply asked to be useful. Izzy permitted it, cautiously. She watched him, looking for signs of inconsistency, waiting for the moment he would walk out again. But he didn't. He took the night shifts, learned to deal with colic, and cleaned spit up from his expensive shirts without complaint. Day after day, he showed up. 3 months later, Izzy found herself in the kitchen at sunset. Ethan was quietly assembling a new baby bouncer in the living room. She heard him humming again, a tuneless melody, and a strange warmth bloomed in her chest. That evening, they sat on the sofa. She offered him a glass of wine. You're different, she said. Not just how you act, but who you are. I feel different, Ethan said. Being with them, with you, has changed everything. Why didn't you come back sooner? She asked, the question she had carried like a stone in her chest. He looked down at his hands. Because I was ashamed. I thought I didn't deserve to reappear, and I feared that if I did, you wouldn't even open the door. I didn't expect you to come back, she said, and I didn't plan for you to stay, but you did. Ethan put down his glass and moved closer to her. I don't expect a second chance, Izzy, but I would give anything to build something better than the first. She wasn't ready to erase the past, but she was ready for something more. Then stay, she said softly. Not just for them. For real. A few weeks later, on the girl's 4-month birthday, Izzy hosted a small gathering in the park. Olivia and Maya slept soundly beside them. Ethan pulled something from his pocket. A small velvet box. I know this isn't a traditional moment, he said, and I know I have so much more to prove. But I also know this is the clearest I've ever felt in my life. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my days making up for the ones I lost. He opened the box. A simple, honest ring. I'm not asking for a perfect future, just the opportunity to build a real one. With you. Izzy looked at the ring, then at the man beside her, and finally at her daughters, sleeping with their fists clenched. For the first time, she didn't feel like she had to protect herself from what she wanted. She took the box and whispered, "Then let's start over." And in the soft glow of that golden afternoon, with the scent of wildflowers in the air and the sound of tiny breaths beside them, they did. Reflection and final call to action. The story of Isabel Hayes and Ethan Sterling is proof that love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone who is willing to be real. Izzy didn't wait to be saved. She rebuilt herself from scratch, transforming heartbreak into strength and silence into purpose. Ethan returned, humbled and ready to prove his worth, not with grand gestures, but with presence and patience. Their reunion isn't based on forgetting the pain, but on overcoming it together. The twins, Olivia and Maya, born of a miracle Izzy was told she'd never have, are the living symbol that life can bloom in the spaces where everything once felt lost. This ending doesn't promise a flawless future, but something more important. A future built on truth, forgiveness, and the kind of love that chooses to stay. Thank you for following this incredible story. If it moved you, subscribe and share this video to honor the power of second chances. Chapter 11. The Daily Test of Trust. Thu Thuk Long Tin Hang Ngay. The engagement didn't erase the 4 months of silent abandonment. Their life together became an intensive study in rebuilding trust, and Izzy was the meticulous professor. They moved into a beautiful, spacious house in Richmond, close to a large park. But the luxury of the house was secondary to the daily accountability. Ethan didn't wear the engagement ring. He wore a new watch, a constant reminder of the time he had to earn back. Izzy's scrutiny was intense, particularly when Ethan returned to his investment firm. I need to know your schedule, not for control, but for transparency, Izzy told him firmly. If you are late, you call. If you have a crisis, you communicate. The old life of self-containment is over. Ethan accepted the terms without protest. He understood that every canceled meeting, every early departure from the office to take a crying baby, was a brick laid in the foundation of trust. He learned to delegate, to prioritize the urgent cries of his daughters over the urgent demands of the market. One evening, a major financial crisis erupted. Ethan had a crucial, unscheduled late-night call with clients in Hong Kong. Izzy, overwhelmed by colic and sleep deprivation, watched him take the call from the spare room. Later, she found him in the nursery, holding a wailing Olivia. It was a disaster, Ethan admitted, exhausted. I lost millions in the last hour, Izzy. Did you hide it? She asked softly, watching him rock their daughter. No, I lost the money, but I told my partners the truth. My priority is here tonight. I rescheduled the follow-up for the morning. Izzy walked over and gently touched his shoulder. The money can be earned back, Ethan. The trust cannot. Do you think Izzy's firm conditions and Ethan's commitment to presence are a realistic model for healing after betrayal? Comment your opinion. Chapter 12. The Lie Exposed. As the twins approached their first birthday, Izzy insisted on seeing a specialist for a definitive, second opinion on her infertility diagnosis. It was a final step she needed for her own peace of mind. Ethan, though worried, fully supported her. The appointment was clinical and thorough. After reviewing the initial reports and conducting new scans, the specialist, Dr. Anya Sharma, walked into the room with a puzzled expression. "Mrs. Hayes," Dr. Sharma began, "your initial diagnosis was incorrect. Based on these advanced scans and blood work, there is absolutely no anatomical or hormonal reason for infertility. In fact, your ovarian function is robust." Izzy and Ethan stared at the doctor in stunned silence. "I believe," Dr. Sharma continued, examining the old report, "that the previous doctor misread the initial hormone panel, possibly confusing the temporary stress markers with a permanent condition. You were never infertile." The relief was physical, but the revelation was a shock. Izzy looked at Ethan. He had left her not because he was scared of a pregnancy, but because he was scared of a life without one, based on a lie. That night, alone in their living room, Izzy confronted him, holding the original report. "You left me based on a mistake," she whispered, her voice tight with residual pain. "You let me grieve the loss of a future that was always possible." "I know," Ethan admitted, tears in his eyes. "But Izzy, the lie was about me, not you. I left because I was obsessed with the perfect life. I wanted the perfect career, the perfect wife, and the perfect 2 children, neatly planned. When the doctor told me the future was imperfect, I ran from the commitment required for the imperfect reality." He knelt before her. "The miracle wasn't that you got pregnant, Izzy. The miracle was that you re-entered my life and forced me to confront the flaw in my own character. That diagnosis exposed my cowardice. I don't love you because you gave me daughters. I love you because you allowed me to heal the part of myself that was incapable of loving anything that wasn't perfect." Izzy looked at her husband, seeing the raw truth. The lie had hurt, but it ultimately revealed the depths of his change. She reached out and pulled him into a fierce, healing embrace. The pain of the past was real, but the future they were building was more so. Final call to action. A future built on truth. This chapter reveals that the greatest obstacle wasn't the diagnosis, but the fear of imperfection. If you believe Ethan's honesty and vulnerability truly earn him forgiveness, share this video now. Comment below. Now that the diagnosis is proven false, should Izzy and Ethan try for a 3rd child, or focus solely on Olivia and Maya? Your support helps us tell stories of transformation. Tuyệt vời, tôi rất vui vì bạn vẫn muốn tiếp tục khám phá những chi tiết sâu sắc hơn trong câu chuyện này, đặc biệt sau tiết lộ lớn đó. Để tiếp nối một cách ý nghĩa, tôi sẽ tập trung vào việc củng cố lại lời hứa của họ dựa trên sự thật và thử thách gia đình đầu tiên của họ. Tôi sẽ tiếp tục với phong cách tiếng Anh lôi cuốn, tuân thủ các quy tắc bạn đã đặt ra. The Twin Miracle, The Vow of the Imperfect Future. Chapter 13. The Vow of the Imperfect. The revelation that Izzy had never been infertile was a shock, but ironically, it cemented their foundation in a way nothing else could have. The false diagnosis had forced Ethan to face his deepest flaw, his fear of imperfection, and he had passed the test. 2 months later, they stood before a judge in a simple, elegant civil ceremony. This wedding was not about proving love. It was about affirming their choice based on the absolute truth. During the vows, Ethan spoke from the heart, discarding the prepared script. "Izzy," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I am not promising you a perfect life. I am not promising you a life without problems, because I now know that would be a lie. I promise you one thing: transparency. I promise to communicate my fears, to confront my flaws, and to never again run from the beautiful, messy, anti-imperfect reality we have built." Izzy, looking radiant in her simple white gown, slipped the honest ring onto his finger. "I promise you my honesty, Ethan. I promise to challenge you, to hold you accountable, and to always remind you that our greatest strength is the courage we found in our weakest moments." Their wedding photos were filled with authentic, unguarded joy. Olivia giggling while grabbing Ethan's tie, Maya sleeping soundly in Chloe's arms, and Izzy and Ethan looking at each other, fully seen and fully accepted. Chapter 14. The Crisis of the Unplanned. Their happiness was tested 6 months later when an uninvited complication from the past resurfaced: Ethan's family. Ethan had always kept his distance from his parents, who embodied the same rigid standards of success and perfection he had struggled to escape. They had been absent during the girl's birth and the wedding, viewing Izzy and the unplanned family as a distraction from Ethan's career track. Now, Ethan's father, Mr. Sterling Sr., called an emergency family dinner. "Ethan," his father began, reviewing his son's recent performance, "your investment returns are down 15% this quarter. Your focus is compromised. You need to get your priorities straight. This domestic situation," he gestured dismissively toward Izzy, "is impacting the legacy." Izzy stood up calmly, facing the patriarch who once terrified her. "Mr. Sterling, the only thing impacting Ethan's legacy is the outdated belief that success is measured solely by profit. He has built a life of integrity, something money can't buy." Mr. Sterling ignored her, focusing his cold gaze on his son. "You need to put your life back on track. We suggest you send the twins to an au pair school in Switzerland and return to your 16-hour workdays." Ethan, however, was no longer the frightened man who had run from a diagnosis. He stood beside his wife, his spine straight. "Father," Ethan said, his voice firm and unwavering, "my priority is no longer the market. It is my family. My daughters are not a distraction. They are my center. And my wife is my partner, not a commodity you can dismiss." He delivered the final defining blow. "I've tendered my resignation from the firm. I'm starting my own fund. One based on ethical, sustainable investments. I will never sacrifice my life for a spreadsheet again. And if that means forfeiting the family name and inheritance, then I accept that price." Izzy watched her husband, her heart swelling with an immense pride that dwarfed any emotion she had ever felt. He had chosen her truth over his legacy. Final call to action. The price of true success. Ethan's ultimate choice, walking away from the inheritance he once craved, proves his total transformation. If you believe he made the right decision, leave a comment with the word integrity to celebrate his choice. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Chapter 15. The New Empire. Ethan's resignation sent shockwaves through the financial world. But his new venture, Ethel Partners, named after an old English word for noble or principle, became an immediate success. He focused on sustainable, socially responsible investments, a clear moral contrast to his family's ruthless, profit-driven legacy. The irony was not lost on the business community. Ethan, freed from the chains of his family's expectations, was more focused and successful than ever before. His clients were drawn not just to his talent, but to his story of redemption and integrity. Lila, Izzy, was his silent, powerful partner. She continued her art, now creating pieces that celebrated the balance of life and work. She used the success of her art to establish a women's resilience fund, investing in business startups run by single mothers, a direct tribute to her own struggle. Their life became a beautifully orchestrated dance of purpose and parenting. Ethan worked flexible hours from their home office, always available for school runs or a quick twin crisis. Lila thrived, managing her art commissions and the fund with the same clarity she used to demand from Ethan's schedule. Olivia and Maya, now vibrant toddlers, were the central focus. They were raised in an environment where true success was measured in laughter, presence, and kindness, not in market share. Do you think the freedom from his family's financial control was the true catalyst for Ethan's massive success? Share your insights in the comments. Chapter 16. The Unexpected Letter. 5 years into their marriage, Ethan received a peculiar package delivered to the old family firm, which was then forwarded to his new office. It was a thick, legal envelope bearing the address of the clinic where Izzy had received her original, false infertility diagnosis. Inside was a letter from the head of the clinic, along with a certified copy of Izzy's initial medical file. The letter explained that the original doctor had recently passed away, and during the audit of his private files, the clinic discovered a note regarding Izzy's case. To whom it may concern, the initial infertility diagnosis for Ms. Hayes, Izzy, was incorrect. She was perfectly fertile. I regret that I rushed the preliminary reading due to personal stresses at the time. I never had the courage to correct this massive, life-altering mistake. Ethan read the note, his hands trembling. It was the confirmation of the lie they already knew, but seeing it in ink gave it finality. He looked up at Izzy, who walked in with a cup of tea. "It's about the diagnosis," he said. Handing her the letter, Izzy read it, her face calm. She looked at the paper, the source of all her initial pain, the catalyst for Ethan's flight, and the accidental trigger for their real love story. She smiled, a peaceful, accepting smile. "He never had the courage to correct it," Izzy murmured, referring to the deceased doctor. "But his mistake led to our greatest truth." She took the letter and gently put it through the paper shredder in their office. "The lie is now completely gone, Ethan," she said, taking his hand. "And all that is left is the life we chose to build on the truth." Their love story wasn't just about a second chance. It was a testament to the powerful, beautiful reality that sometimes the most devastating mistakes in life are the ones that force us onto the path of our greatest, most authentic blessings. Final call to action. What an incredible ending. If this story inspires you to seek your own authentic truth, comment below with the word authentic to celebrate their journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
The soft morning light filtered through sheer white curtains, casting a gentle glow across the room, like a whispered promise of peace. Anna Collins stirred awake in the warm arms of the man she once believed was her destiny. Matthew Grayson lay asleep beside her, his strong arm draped protectively around her waist, a quiet habit that spoke volumes of tenderness. Even in sleep, he never let her go. Anna turned gently to face him, her eyes tracing the familiar lines of his face bathed in golden light. His lashes were thick and dark, his lips slightly pursed in the stillness of slumber. Something in that quiet moment made her heart race, as if she were seeing him for the very first time. 3 years earlier, they met at a design expo, where Anna had curated a stunning exhibit. Matthew, a rising tech entrepreneur, had walked up and said something she'd never forget. "The only thing that made me stop wasn't the lamp. It was the one who placed it." Just one sentence, one conversation about art, dreams, and children's books, and Anna knew her heart had fallen into a place from which it could never return. Matthew loved her wholly and without hesitation, and Anna gave him all of herself, with tenderness, fragility, and the quiet hope of a woman who once believed she didn't deserve to be loved so completely. 1 year later, they married. Their small white house by the San Francisco Bay became their sanctuary. Anna left her design firm and began illustrating children's books. a childhood dream she'd buried for years. Matthew supported her every step, placing her happiness above the chaos of boardrooms and investor meetings. Every morning, they brewed coffee together, listened to jazz, and read the paper in sunlight. On weekends, they walked in the park, took candid photos, talked for hours like there was never enough time. She once told him, "If I could frame these moments, I'd hang them in every corner of our home." But even the sweetest love stories can feel the wind before the storm. Matthew's mother, Victoria Grayson, made her first entrance during a family dinner. Her silver hair was perfectly pinned, her eyes sharp as blades. She smiled at Anna and said, "You're interesting. I don't think Matthew's ever chosen someone so simple." Her smile was velvet, but her words cut like ice. Anna smiled back, but something shifted. In that moment she knew a quiet battle had begun, not with shouting or slamming doors, but with silent glances, subtle comments, and cracks that begin in glass long before the shatter. Anna had always believed that evil never arrived with thunder, but with silence, and she was right. What unraveled between her and Matthew didn't begin with a storm, but with quiet cracks, invisible to the untrained eye. After the first dinner with Victoria, something in the air changed. Matthew didn't say anything directly, but Anna could feel a subtle shift. He seemed more cautious when talking about his mother. Once, when Anna made a light-hearted joke about Victoria's sharp remarks, he only smiled awkwardly and changed the subject. Anna felt like she had entered a contest she didn't know the rules to. She tried harder, at everything, to be the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, but the harder she tried, the more inadequate she felt. Victoria's presence became more frequent, and with each visit came another offhand comment, a glance too long, a question that wasn't quite a question. "You're very kind," Victoria said one afternoon over tea. "But kindness isn't always what a man needs to thrive in this world." Anna smiled. That night, she cried in the bathroom. And then came the night everything broke. On the very evening Anna had planned to tell Matthew she was pregnant. She'd kept the secret for nearly a week, not out of fear but hope. She wanted the perfect moment. A quiet evening, soft candlelight, his favorite potato soup, and a small note she'd placed inside a children's book. Our next chapter begins with 2 tiny heartbeats. But Victoria had other plans. That evening, Anna received a text from Matthew. "Mom's dropping by. I'll be late. Don't prepare anything." She sighed but smiled. It could wait one more day. Victoria arrived shortly after, but she wasn't alone. With her was a man Anna didn't recognize, David, introduced vaguely as an old family friend. Victoria said she had to make a quick call and insisted Anna and David have some tea. Anna, slightly unsettled, remained polite. She poured tea, made small talk. David was friendly, though something about him felt rehearsed. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. A few minutes later, Victoria returned and chaos exploded. "Matthew," she cried, voice trembling. Matthew stepped through the front door to a scene frozen in tension. Anna and David sitting together, a teacup shattered on the floor, and Victoria standing between them, her face pale and stricken. She tried something," Victoria gasped. "She locked me in the kitchen, and when I got out, I found this." "What?" Anna blinked. I didn't do anything. What are you talking about?" "Anna, you locked my mother in the kitchen?" Matthew's voice was sharp, clipped. "No, I didn't, I just, she turned to David. "Tell him." David looked down, silent. "She told me I could stay if I wanted," he murmured. "I think it was just a misunderstanding." "No," Anna screamed, "you're lying." Matthew said nothing. He stared at her with eyes she barely recognized. Cold, distant. After a long silence, he turned and walked into his study. When he came back, he was holding a file. "I've already signed," he said. "I hope you do too." Anna stood frozen, her world cracking open. She wanted to scream that she was pregnant, that this was all a setup, that Victoria had manipulated everything. But her throat locked. Matthew left that night without looking back. Victoria stepped close, whispering as she pulled the door shut. "I told you he was never yours." New York. The city that never sleeps, where everyone runs toward ambition, escape, or a new beginning. For Anna Collins, it wasn't a destination. It was a refuge. She didn't choose it because it felt close, but because it was far enough for no one to remember she had once been Matthew Grayson's wife. She arrived in New York visibly pregnant. In the biting cold of winter, she dragged her suitcase through Union Square, her tears long since dried. She didn't need pity. She needed a place to give birth, to survive. She found a small apartment in Brooklyn, third floor, creaky wooden stairs, but it had a window that caught sunlight, and that was enough. She gave birth to twin boys on a gusty March morning, Eli and Evan. No family, no one to cut the cords except a kind nurse from the clinic. But the moment she held them, Anna knew she wasn't alone anymore. Her days became a blur of feedings, lullabies, deadlines. She drew children's illustrations during nap time, sent drafts by email, paid rent month to month, and kept a steady smile when her sons asked about Dad. Anna picked up her pen again. She submitted work to indie publishers. A small press in Manhattan fell in love with her tender, soulful lines, especially a sketchbook titled The Bear Who Waited, inspired by Evan waiting for Eli in the ER during a fever scare. Anna wasn't famous, but she had readers. Not rich, but she and her boys had enough. Enough warmth, enough food, enough love. Their tiny apartment was covered in artwork, by Anna, by Eli, by Evan. The once blank walls now held forests, oceans, castles, and a figure called the missing father. Eli and Evan grew fast. They had everything but a dad. Their steel gray eyes and thoughtful stares reminded Anna too often of a man they had never met, but she had never forgotten. Anna didn't lie, but she didn't tell everything. When they asked, "Who is our dad?" she would simply say, "Someone Mom loved very much." Eli would think for a moment, "Did he love you back?" Anna would smile gently, "He did, but sometimes love gets lost in all the wrong things." Each night she told them stories, her own creations, tales of a kingdom broken by misunderstandings, a father cursed to forget, and a mother lighting the way with nothing but heart and hope. Every birthday they would ask, "Does he know we exist?" She would hold them tight. Maybe not yet, but one day he will. She believed that. Even if she no longer hoped in Matthew as a man, she believed he had a right as a father to know. And then it came. One late autumn afternoon, Anna received a heavy envelope from an unknown address. Inside, a wedding invitation. Matthew Grayson and Claudia Mercer. Ceremony at St. Michael's Cathedral, San Francisco. Anna stood still. After 8 years, she hadn't heard his name, not once. At that moment, Evan, reaching for markers, pulled the card from her hand. "Grayson," he read aloud. "Mom, that's the name from our bedtime books." Ellie asked slowly, "Is this our dad?" Anna didn't answer, but her silence was loud. Evan said, "I don't know if he's good or bad, but I want to meet him. Just once." Anna sank to the floor, her head on her son's shoulder. She knew. She couldn't hide anymore. "All right," she whispered. "We'll go, so he'll know you were always here." 2 days after receiving the wedding invitation, Anna still hadn't decided what to do. The card sat open on the dining table, untouched since. Every time she passed it, her heart skipped a beat. She'd thought about throwing it away. But Eli and Evan, sensing something, always placed it neatly back in the center, like a quiet reminder, "We want to meet our father." Anna couldn't blame them. How could she, when they'd never heard his voice, never once been held in his arms? She had given them everything, except one truth they deserved. That night, after the boys were asleep, Anna picked up the invitation again. "Matthew Grayson and Claudia Mercer cordially invite you to their wedding at St. Michael's Cathedral, San Francisco, December 15th. Claudia Mercer. Anna had heard the name. A high-powered attorney, daughter of Judge Meredith Mercer, the kind of woman Victoria Grayson would have chosen without hesitation. Perfect, polished, untouchable. Anna stared at Matthew's name, bold and sharp. She wondered, did he ever think of her? Did he know about the twins? Or had Victoria wrapped the truth in velvet lies and locked it away? The next day, she took the boys for a walk through Central Park. The air was crisp, the sunlight clear. Evan ran ahead while Eli held her hand and whispered, "Mom, would you be mad if we want to meet Dad?" Anna knelt beside him, brushing a curl from his forehead. "No, baby, I wouldn't be mad. I'm just scared. Your dad may not be ready." "Then we'll go," Evan chimed in. "If he's not ready, we'll help him get ready." Anna laughed, a sound caught between joy and sorrow. She made her decision. They would go to San Francisco, not to stop a wedding, not to cause pain, but to speak the truth, once and for all. Whatever happened afterward was Matthew's choice, but he couldn't say he never knew. They flew to San Francisco on December 13th, 2 days before the ceremony. She rented a small place on Twin Peaks, overlooking the city. That night, they sat by the window, looking at the lights. Anna said, "Tomorrow we go to the cathedral. But remember, we don't go to fight. We go to speak the truth. Okay?" Eli nodded. "What if he doesn't believe us?" Anna squeezed his hand. "Then we'll show him." "Are you scared?" Evan asked. She looked out at the city that once held all her dreams. "Yes, but I'm more afraid that he'll never know you exist." The morning of December 15th was cold and misty. Anna dressed the boys in matching navy suits. She wore a long gray dress, hair in a low bun, no makeup, but her eyes carried a light that had been lost for 8 years. They arrived at St. Michael's just as the ceremony began. Choir singing, guests seated, heads turned as they walked down the center aisle. Anna held their hands. She said nothing, neither did anyone else. Matthew stood at the altar in a black tuxedo. When he saw them, his face drained of color. Claudia turned. Her expression crumbled as her eyes landed on the boys. Mirror images of Matthew. Anna stopped halfway down the aisle. Evan let go of her hand, stepped forward, and said clearly, "Dad." A ripple ran through the cathedral. Matthew froze. Eli followed his brother. "Dad, I'm Eli. This is Evan. Mom said you didn't know, but now you do." No one moved. No one breathed. Anya walked up beside them. Her eyes met Matthew's. "I'm not here to stop your wedding. I came to tell you, you left more than me behind. You left them. You deserve to know, and they deserve to know you." Victoria Grayson slowly stood, her face white as stone. Matthew stepped back. His hand covered his mouth. Tears brimmed in his eyes. Claudia turned. "Do you know them?" Matthew shook his head. I didn't, I swear." Evan looked up at Anna. "Can we go now?" Anna nodded. She turned to leave, but as she passed Claudia, she paused. "I hope you'll be happy. But if you plan to marry a man, make sure he has nothing left unresolved." Claudia didn't reply. Her eyes were dry but red. Outside, the cold wind hit Anna's cheeks. But for the first time in years, her chest felt light. Behind her, chaos burst inside the cathedral. Someone shouted Matthew's name. Then came footsteps. Anna turned. Matthew ran after them, tie loose, eyes filled with tears. "Anna, is it true? Are they mine?" Anna didn't speak. Eli and Evan turned to face him. Matthew dropped to his knees, arms open. Evan stepped forward, without hesitation. Eli followed, and then Anna. And for the first time in 8 years, her family stood in the same place. No one left St. Michael's after Anna and the boys appeared. The wedding was no longer the center. The entire room sank into a strange silence, not one of reverence, but of shock, of unspoken questions echoing in the vaulted ceiling. Matthew remained kneeling, arms wide open. Evan and Eli embraced him, drawn into a bubble where time melted. 8 years collapsed into a single moment of blood-deep connection. Anna stood a few feet away, watching. She didn't cry. She clenched her hands tightly, as if letting go would make it all fall apart. A soft sob broke the quiet. "Claudia!" She didn't scream, didn't throw anything. She simply stood still, her gaze shifting. "Anna, Matthew, the boys." Then she turned and walked out of the cathedral. No one stopped her. No one dared. Anna watched her go. She didn't hate Claudia. She hadn't come to reclaim anything. She had come to tell the truth as a mother. Matthew slowly rose. His voice trembled. "Is it real?" Anna nodded. "They're mine?" "Yes, and you never told me because you didn't believe me," she said gently. "Because I left with nothing but the silence you chose." He stepped forward, then stopped. "I didn't know. Mother said, 'You betrayed me.' I believed her." Anna looked at him. "Because it was easier to believe the lie than listen to me." The air thickened. Guests sat in stunned stillness. Except for Victoria. She stood now, pale and shaken, her once commanding presence cracked. She stepped into the aisle. "Anna?" she called. Anna turned. "This isn't right," Victoria said, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't ruin a day like this." Anna said nothing. Evan tugged her sleeve. "Is she the reason Dad left us?" Anna knelt, touched his cheek. "All that matters is, I never left you. That's what's true." Matthew turned to his mother. "It was you, wasn't it?" Victoria swallowed. "I only wanted you to be happy Claudia was better." "No," he cut in. "I'm asking if you lied about Anna, about David, about everything." She hesitated. All eyes in the cathedral bore into her. "I lost a wife, 8 years, 2 children, because of you." "You don't understand. You never let me love anyone but you," Matthew said quietly. Victoria trembled, then stepped back, legs shaky. She looked at Anna, then the twins, her eyes hollow. For the first time, Anna didn't see a powerful woman. She saw someone, old, alone, who had just realized she'd destroyed the very thing she thought she was protecting. "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered, but no one accepted it. It was too late. For the first time, the matriarch stood not as a force, but as a shadow of what power could never save. Amma stood, holding Evan and Eli close. She didn't want to stay another second. "Let's go," she whispered. Matthew followed. "Please, wait." "Don't go." Anna turned. "I don't know what you want, Matthew. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want to be their father, to start again, if you let me." She looked at him, then at the boys. "You didn't choose me when I needed you most," she whispered. "This time, choose them." He nodded. "I will, whether you give me another chance or not." 3 days later, Matthew came to the small apartment she'd rented. No flowers, no ring, no begging, just one promise. "I'd like to see them every week. Take them to the park, help with homework. Not for you, for them. They deserve a father." Anna agreed, not because she had forgiven him, but because she believed every child had the right to know where they came from, honestly. And so, from an unfinished wedding, began a new chapter. Not of romance, but of family. An imperfect family, but a real one. A week after the interrupted wedding, Victoria Grayson had not left her grand estate in Palo Alto. Heavy velvet curtains covered every window, shutting out the sun, just as she'd spent a lifetime shutting out anything that might warm her heart. She sat motionless in an old armchair by the cold fireplace. The staff had all left. No visitors came. Calls from social circles stopped once news spread about Matthew's canceled wedding. She had once been the star of every gala, every charity luncheon, but now silence ruled her home. No laughter, no heels clicking across marble floors, no clinking teacups, only the breath of a woman slowly drowning in regret. Victoria had never imagined she would become irrelevant. But worse than being forgotten, was being abandoned by her own son. Matthew had come once, the week after. He didn't yell, didn't accuse. He simply looked her in the eye and said, "You stole my family." 4 words, and they cut deeper than anything she'd ever known. After that, she never saw him again. And she was not allowed near the 2 boys, her grandsons, whom she had erased from their father's life for 8 long years. She remembered Anna's expression that day, not angry, not vengeful, just still, quiet, a verdict without a judge. Victoria no longer cried. Tears she used to believe were for the weak, but now, in this long, aching silence, she realized silence was the harsher sentence. When no one wanted to speak to her, when even her remorse had no listener, apologies lost their meaning. One afternoon, she stepped into the backyard, the rose garden that once made her proud. Most flowers had wilted, the gardener had quit. In her hand was a letter, written in trembling script. "Anna, I don't expect forgiveness, but if one day Eli and Evan are ready, please, give me a chance, just to sit with them, not as a grandmother, but as a woman who made the greatest mistake of her life. Victoria Grayson." She didn't send it, not yet. She folded the letter and placed it in a drawer where she used to keep old love letters. Beside it was a photograph of young Matthew. That boy, he was now a father. Victoria knew if she wanted to rebuild anything, the first step wasn't asking for forgiveness. It was learning how to exist as someone who no longer had a place in the center of someone else's life. She needed to relearn motherhood, or, if not that, learn, at last, how to be a human being. And while Victoria quietly faced the ruins of all she had destroyed somewhere else, Matthew was beginning a new journey. The journey to rebuild trust with his sons and the woman he once let go. Matthew Grayson didn't know how to be a father. He'd learned to manage corporations, speak before international boards, make million-dollar decisions in minutes. But standing in front of 2 8-year-olds, he felt clumsy, like someone learning to walk again. The first visit after the wedding was on a cold Sunday in Brooklyn. Anna stayed downstairs at the cafe, leaving the apartment to the 3 of them. No pressure, no terms, just a chance, and Matthew didn't want to waste it. He arrived on time, carrying 2 donuts and a children's book titled Where the River Ends, illustrated by Anna. Eli opened the door, said nothing, but didn't close it either. Evan peeked from behind his brother. Do you know how to play soccer?" Matthew smiled. "I can learn." And so they headed to the nearby park. It was still cold, the grass damp, but laughter soon echoed. Evan kicked the ball into his leg, while Eli quietly observed. Matthew didn't try to be their friend. He didn't force closeness. He just showed up. They ended the afternoon sitting on a bench. Matthew read from the book, stumbling occasionally. But Evan leaned on his shoulder, and Eli sat close by, and for the first time, Matthew didn't feel like a stranger in his own life. Over the following weeks, he came every Saturday. One weekend, they visited the museum. Another, they attended a free art class Anna found. Matthew didn't know how to paint, but he tried to draw a crocodile that looked like a camel and made the boys laugh uncontrollably. Anna watched from afar. She didn't interfere, didn't encourage or prevent. She let the children feel and decide. One evening, Eli came home and tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, today Dad didn't check his phone even once." Anna smiled. "Really?" "Yeah. He even remembered our birthday. He asked what kind of cake we like." She knelt to unclip his hair. "Did that make you happy?" Eli nodded. "It made me happy too." For the first time in years, Matthew wasn't just the man who left. He was becoming a father, trying to make things right, not through words, but through quiet, consistent action. One night, after bringing the boys home, Matthew stood at Anna's door, holding a wrinkled drawing Evan had given him. "I know I lost you, Anna," he said quietly. "But if you see that I'm trying, not to win you back, but to grow up, Then thank you for letting me do the right thing. Anna took the paper, a house with 3 people and an open door. They drew you in, she whispered. That means they're starting to let you in. Matthew nodded. He didn't say more, because he understood. Trust isn't earned through promises, it's built with patience. Spring arrived slowly in New York, as if the city was still hesitating after a long, somber winter. But in a small Brooklyn apartment, the tulips on the windowsill had bloomed, planted by Evan from seeds in January. Their bright yellow petals made the whole room feel warmer. Anna stood in the kitchen, gently stirring a pot of soup, eyes watching her sons laugh with Matthew on the balcony. It was his 14th visit, never missed, never late. This time, he brought a Lego set Eli had been dreaming about. She couldn't deny it. Matthew had changed. He was no longer the overly confident man who hid behind work and prestige. Now, he spent hours building castles, let Evan paint fake lipstick on his face during salon time, and knew every character from a cartoon series he used to ignore but could change. Undo everything that had once broken. Anna remembered too clearly the feeling of leaving that empty house years ago, hand on her swollen belly, heart tangled in grief and betrayal. She had lost so much: trust, time, and a man she thought would be her home. Now Matthew was back, not as a lover, but as a father. But would there come a day when he would choose to walk away again? One evening, after the boys had gone to bed, Matthew stepped onto the balcony where Anna sat with her tea. He sat beside her, silent for a long while. Then, quietly, "I think about you every day," he said, "even when I know I don't deserve to." Anna didn't respond. "I'm not asking you to come back," he continued. "But I'll be here as long as the boys need me, and if one day you decide to move forward, with or without me, at least you'll know I didn't disappear again." She turned to face him, looked into the eyes that once made her believe in everything, and once made her question everything. "Are you sure this time you'll choose to believe me, not someone else?" she asked. Matthew nodded, without hesitation. "Then prove it. Not with words, with time." She stood and walked inside. 2 weeks later, Anna received an invitation from a London publishing house to join a 6-month project. They wanted her to collaborate with international illustrators on a dream book. The kind of opportunity she'd once let go when she became a mother, she was ready to decline. But Eli saw the email. "Go, Mom," he said. "We have Dad now." Evan chimed in. "Dad's noodles are gross, but we'll teach him." Anna laughed, then cried, not because of the offer, but because, for the first time in 8 years, she didn't feel trapped between motherhood and personal dreams. For the first time, she was allowed to choose herself. She looked at Matthew, standing at the doorway, having heard everything. He didn't interrupt, didn't plead. He simply said, "If you go, I'll stay. 6 months, a year, as long as it takes. I'll care for them like they deserve. And when you come back, whatever you decide, I'll still be here." Anna nodded. "Then I'll go." Not to escape, not to test him, but because she was finally ready to live her life, scars, hopes, and a slowly mending trust. And maybe, just maybe, healing didn't mean going back. It meant moving forward with honesty.